There's been a lot of horror media recently of just people just smiling. Is people smiling really like that scary of a concept? Well, done the right way, it is probably one of the most terrifying things that I've seen. And one of the rising series that deals with this similar concept is the horror manga named Smiley, made by Hattori Mite. But how terrifying is this series really? Would it be just as terrifying as the Smile franchise? Or would it be a dud just like the Grimace series? Well, let's just go ahead and get straight into it. The series begins with the main character revealing his distaste for smiles. Yushi Kamome, a struggling journalist, hasn't released any good stories lately. His boss warns him that if he doesn't bring in a good story soon, that he will be fired. Later that day, while Yushi is at home, he hears a knock at his door. Standing outside is a group of smiling religious recruiters who claim that they want to help him find his smile. Yushi immediately screams at them to just F off and tries to slam the door shut, but one of the women wedges her hand in the doorframe, stopping him. She politely insists that he takes a pamphlet. In response, Yushi crushes her fingers in the door, but when he opens it again, the women simply laugh creepily instead of crying in pain. One of them hands him the pamphlet for their church, the Shinshou Society. Yushi glances at it and then freezes when he recognizes one of the smiling faces on the pamphlet. It's Megumin, his wife. That night, Yushi goes to a bar to meet with a detective named Yozumi. Yushi asks if he knows anything about the Shinshou Society. Yozumi looks shocked and then urges him to stop investigating them immediately. He offers Yushi another case to cover instead, but Yushi insists that he isn't chasing a story this time. Yozumi grows serious and then gives him one last warning. Do not get involved with the Shinshou Society. Sometime later, we cut to the future. Yushi, now going undercover, has infiltrated the Shinshou Society in search of Megumin. Having completed his initiation, he is now considered a member of the cult. While mingling with some other members, some ask him for some blessings, which basically just means donating money. One member invites him to a special event happening that very moment. Yushi follows and enters a large gathering hall where hundreds of members are chanting for Father Shoen. A strange-looking man appears before the crowd, declaring that the most beautiful thing in the world is a smile. On his command, everyone in the room erupts into hysterical laughter. The next day, Yushi begins investigating the cult. The Shinshou Society was founded in 1998 by Father Shoen and has grown to over 25,000 members. Aside from that, Yushi can't find any information on them. Their public image is pretty much just spotless. However, he does stumble upon a website run by the Shinshou Society Victims Association. Just as he's about to click on it, his internet connection suddenly cuts out. Later, his boss asks what he's been researching. Glancing at his computer, he notices the Shinshou Society in the search bar and then sternly warns him to stop looking into them. Yushi insists that he's not writing an article on the cult, but his boss still warns him to just drop it immediately. At the church, Yushi is being taught how to smile and laugh properly, along with other new recruits who are sharing why they joined. When asked about his reasons, Yushi just lies, saying that he joined after seeing a flyer and being captivated by a smile by a particular member, and he claims that he hopes to meet her someday. The group leader's smile just briefly cuts off, as she tells Yushi that Megumin isn't in their branch, but if he earns enough virtues, then he might gain access to the main branch. Yushi takes this as confirmation that she knows something, and he vows to make her talk. Meanwhile, at the newspaper office, Yushi's boss panics after realizing that Yushi has searched the society on a work computer. He mutters out loud that he doesn't want to end up like the last person. Suddenly, through a door window, a pale white face appears grinning at him. When the boss turns around, the figure has vanished. Yushi begins obsessively stalking the woman. Her name is Suzumura Yuka. He studies her schedule, her home, her habits, searching for any weakness. Suddenly, Yozumi shows up to check on him, remarking that it's been 2 years since his daughter's tragic accident. Yushi lies, forcing a smile as he claims that he's gotten over it. However, Yozumi immediately recognizes that he's lying, but he leaves anyway, warning that many people have disappeared after joining the society. That night, Yuichi tails Yuka, but his phone suddenly rings. To his shock, it's his personal cell phone, not his undercover one. When he answers, Yuka's voice is on the other end, asking what he's doing. He looks up and she's gone from his sight, only to reappear right in front of him. She takes his hand and presses him to explain his business with her. Yushi quickly improvises, saying that he struggles to communicate with the other members. Yuka hugs him gently, telling him that in their scripture, families must love each other equally, never lie, and always believe in each other. If you can't, then you will be scorned. As she turns to leave, Yushi suddenly asks how she knew about his personal cell phone since it wasn't even registered anywhere. She replies, "The Shinshou Society knows everything." A week passes with Yushi making no progress. Even while juggling freelance articles and doing odd jobs, he can barely afford the cult's expensive monthly dues. When he returns to the office, the entire newsroom is in chaos over the discovery of 3 corpses. The shocking detail is that all 3 victims were found naked and their faces have been crushed. Shortly after, Yuka calls Yushi and asks if they can meet at a cafe. During their conversation, she suddenly asks him if he knows Megumin. Yushi denies it, but Yuka grabs his hand and presses him to be honest. Yushi deflects by accusing her of trying to read his pulse. She bursts into laughter, sneering at him. "You make me sick. I wish I could crush that face." Meanwhile, Yozumi investigates the corpse. At first, he assumes the victims were killed by their crushed face, but the autopsy reveals the truth. They were actually hung, and afterwards, their faces were crushed. Back at the cafe, Yuka offers Yushi an alternative way to meet Megumin. Instead of wasting all of his money, she explains that in 2 weeks, there will be a birthday celebration for Father Shoen's successor, Father Shoko. Megumin will be there in attendance. Yushi immediately knows that it's a trap but agrees to attend. However, Yuka warns him that he still lacks the proper qualifications to even be allowed near Father Shoko. The next day, Yushi calls Yozumi to ask if he's handling the case of the smashed faces. Yushi hints that he needs the story for money, but Yozumi refuses, saying that it's a major case and that he can't leak any details. Yozumi hangs up before Yushi could even bring up the cult's connection. Later, during the autopsy, Yozumi confirms his suspicion. After the victims were hanged, their faces were peeled off, and each one was left in grotesque, smiling expressions. A week later, Yuka summons all the new recruits. She explains that to qualify for Father Shoko's birthday, they must undergo a test. For 3 days, they are forbidden from eating, drinking, or sleeping. Only those who continue laughing throughout will be allowed to attend. Yushi forces himself to laugh endlessly, repeating in his mind that no matter the pain, he will see Megumin again. As the days wear on, his body begins shutting down. His vision darkens, his thoughts blur, his stomach cramps, yet he continues laughing. Finally, after days of agony, the group begins clapping. They congratulate him for succeeding. In 4 days, he will be taken to the celebration. Yushi is horrified, realizing that he had been laughing just like the others without even noticing. He collapses, and Yuka catches him, whispering, "Well done, Mr. Kamome." At the police station, Yozumi is suddenly removed from the case with no explanation. He realizes that the cult must have infiltrated the police. 4 days later, Yushi and the other members are blindfolded and loaded into a van. Yuka sits beside him. To conceal the location, the group is injected with a drug that puts them to sleep. Yushi dreams of his wife and daughter urging him to laugh with them at a comedy show. He wakes up in a massive ceremonial hall filled with masked, smiling members chanting, "Praise Father Shoko." On a throne sits Father Shoko himself, revealed to just be a child wearing a smiling mask. Members line up to receive his blessing. When they remove their mask before him, Shoko kisses each of them on their forehead. Overcome with emotion, they break down crying and pledge their eternal love and loyalty to him. Yushi notices that this is a potential chance to identify Megumin, since each member removes their mask when approaching him. But when it's his turn, Megumin is nowhere to be found. Kneeling before the child, Yushi receives a kiss on the forehead, but before that, Shoko whispers, "It's nice to finally meet you." Yushi briefly sees Shoko glowing, though he dismisses it as a hallucination. He also catches a sharp chemical odor in the air. Suddenly, Shoko begins laughing at somebody. The members cheer and congratulate the woman that Shoko directed his laughter towards. Someone announces that Shoko has blessed her with a new smile. And now, the rapture will begin. Yuka grips Yushi's arm, urging him to watch closely. The chosen woman is dragged back into the hall, stripped naked and bald. She is injected with a drug, and the cult begins slicing into the back of her head, cutting around until they peel her face clean off. Another peeled off face from someone else is brought forward and grafted onto her. To the society, she now has been given a new smile. Yushi is horrified, and he breaks his cover, and he says that they're insane. Immediately, Yuka stabs a syringe into him and injects him with a drug as the volume ends. Volume 2 begins with a flashback 2 years into the past. A younger Yushi is reporting on cases showing his ruthless approach to journalism, willing to lie and manipulate if it means uncovering the truth. At home, he has a loving family, his wife Megumin and their daughter Yui. Yui has recently been spending time with a child prodigy named Yuta, who tells her that happiness comes to those who smile. And obviously at the time, Yushi doesn't see anything wrong with that. During dinner one evening, Yushi receives a phone call from his partner about a pair of dismembered hands that were found. He prepares to leave for the crime scene, but Megumin reminds him that in 2 weeks, it will be Yui's birthday, and that he cannot miss it like he did the year before. The investigation reveals that multiple dismembered body parts have been scattered throughout the district. Only the head and torso remain missing. A younger Yozumi is assigned to the case, and Yushi meets with him to get information. Despite being former classmates and now friends, Yozumi refuses to give Yushi anything. In response though, Yushi offers Yozumi some information of his own, in exchange for details about the case. Yushi rushes back to the newspaper office with the scoop. It turns out that the body parts belong to a fashion model, and the police may even have a suspect. However, Yushi's rival at the time, Tsuji, who would later become his boss, publicly exposes him for lying and making up fake stories to manipulate victims. The two nearly come to blows when Yushi gets a phone call from Megumin. She explains that she needs to visit her mom and asks Yushi to pick Yui up from kindergarten. Yushi picks Yui up and explains the situation to her. Yui proudly shows him a drawing that she made of herself and Yuta. Yushi is relieved that she has a good friend and decides to meet Yuta himself. However, when he approaches the boy, Yuta only stares back with a strange, unsettling smile. Creeped out, Yushi quickly takes Yui home. As they leave, Yuta mutters to himself, "Found it." Meanwhile, Yozumi arrests a suspect responsible for murders that have been going on for 15 years, information that he only learned thanks to Yushi's tip. Yushi takes pictures of the arrest and his article breaks records at the office. Seeing his success, the current boss, Tateishi, demands that Yushi also be the one to break the dismemberment case. Yushi already planned to pursue it, but it happens to fall on Yui's birthday, and he is determined to spend the day with her instead. Yushi and Yui go out to buy a cake, and as they wait to cross the street, Yushi receives a call from his partner saying that the missing torso had been discovered near where Yushi currently is. As he quickly writes down the location, he looks up to see Yui crossing the street, a car suddenly speeding towards her and then crashing into her. Yui's lifeless body lies on the pavement, her birthday cake spilled across the road. The driver, instead of panicking, is seen laughing. The driver is arrested immediately for Yui's death. However, 3 months later, Yushi has still not returned to work, and his relationship with Megumi deteriorates as he can't even look her in the eyes. After one particular bitter argument, Megumi disappears, never to be seen again. On the news, Yushi sees that the dismemberment case has finally been solved. The killer turned himself in, bringing the victim's head with him. Overwhelmed, Yushi breaks into hysterical laughter. He had poured everything into chasing that case, but now with both his daughter and his wife gone, in that moment, he swore to never smile again. Yushi wakes up in the present inside a white room. Walking out, he finds Yuka sitting at a table. She greets him by his real name and asks him to sit with her. This time, her expression is completely serious. When Yushi tries lying about his name again, Yuka burst into a genuine laughter. She explains that Megumin once told her that he was a terrible liar. Yuka asks him if, after everything that he's seen, he is still willing to search for Megumin. She then reminds him of the infamous dismemberment case. Yushi recites the details from memory, but Yuka reveals that the victim was actually her husband. They were never married publicly, as the cult forbids marriage between believers and non-believers. Everything was fine until her husband was murdered. Yuka is convinced that the cult was responsible. She doesn't know why she herself wasn't even targeted, but everyone who has disobeyed the cult has ended up dead, except her. At that moment, Yuka's son walks into the room, and it's revealed to be Yuta. Yushi realizes that Megumin and Yuka were friends through their children, and that it was Yuka who introduced Megumin to the cult. After that, no one was able to contact Megumin again. Yushi declares that no matter what, he'll do anything for Megumin. Yuka admits that she can't investigate the cult anymore because of Yuta, so she begs Yushi to uncover evidence and then save Megumin. The next day, Yushi confronts Tsuji about the Shinshou Society. Tsuji becomes angry, but Yushi insists that the cult has murdered people and demands to know if Tsuji is aware of it. Though reluctantly, Tsuji notices a determined look in Yushi's eyes, one he hasn't seen in a while. Tsuji finally reveals that on January 20th, 2017, their former boss, Tateishi, died under suspicious circumstances, supposedly by suicide. That very same day, Tsuji had been searching for a missing file. Yushi asks if the cult was involved, but Tsuji refuses to say anymore. He does admit that though he despises Yushi, he would never wish death upon him. That night, Yushi searches the company computer and then finds the missing January 20th file. It shows a draft headline, "A New Religion with a Deadly Smile," but the headline was replaced before publication. This proves Tateishi was preparing to expose the society. Yushi realizes that this means there might be a mole within the editorial department, as suddenly we see a smiling face watching him from the doorway. He rushes out into the hall, but it's empty. The next day, Yushi meets with his old partner Yamamoto. They go to a bar to catch up, and Yamamoto reveals that he was actually the one to find Tateishi's hanging body. Yushi presses him, asking if Tateishi was truly Soreasu. Yamamoto snaps, accusing him of not understanding the trauma that he's lived with since he abandoned the company. Yushi pushes harder, asking if Yamamoto was the one who wrote the January 20th article. Yushi demands to know the truth, declaring that from this point on, this is his war. At the church, Yuka secretly pulls a note from a small hidden hole. Meanwhile, Yushi continues attending the church, trying harder than ever to just try to blend in. Later, we see Yushi and Yamamoto meeting at their old boss's grave. Yamamoto admits that he wasn't the one who wrote the article. Their boss truly wanted to publish it, but Tsuji had changed it. He also reveals that Tateishi wasn't the only casualty. The journalist who originally wrote the article also disappeared. Yamamoto begs Yushi to stop, terrified that he'll end up dead like the others. Before they part, Yushi demands to know the journalist's name. Yamamoto reveals it to be Nagaoka. Back at the church, Yushi pulls out a hidden note Yuka was at earlier. It reads, "Nagaoka joined the society and left. That means that Nagaoka might still be alive." Yushi visits Nagaoka's house. His wife doesn't know much, only that he vanished a month ago. Their daughter, Makoto, briefly enters the room but ignores him completely. As he leaves, she confronts him outside, asking if he's a journalist like her father and who he's really doing this for. 2 days later, Yushi returns to the house only to find police and reporters swarming the area. A reporter informs him that the 3 unidentified corpses have now been identified. One of them is Nagaoka. Upon hearing this, Yushi does not cry, but instead, he smiles. Elsewhere, Yamamoto learns of his passing. He remembers when Nagaoka secretly gave him a flash drive, telling him to keep it safe and never give it to anyone. Panicked, Yamamoto almost throws it into the toilet, but stops himself. Instead, he decides to call Yushi and arrange a meeting. Meanwhile, at the church, a sermon is being held about humans wanting happiness. The preacher declares that all people truly want is happiness, and that nothing brings happiness like laughter. Yushi waits for Yamamoto, but Yamamoto never shows up. The volume ends with the crowd erupting into laughter as we cut to Yamamoto's corpse creepily smiling, his face being peeled off and his skull crushed with a hammer by an unknown member of the cult. But before we get to the next part, I just want to say that we now have a Discord server. So if you guys want to talk about your favorite series, get recommendations, and just connect with some like-minded fans of mine, then this is the server for you. We'll soon be hosting live community events like games, live reactions, and live readings only on the Discord server. So if you want to be involved in this, then why not scroll down and join our community. Also, we just opened up a Patreon, so if you guys want early access videos, uncensored videos, and just to support the channel in general, then why not go ahead and check out the Patreon. But back to the video. The third volume begins with Suji in the bathroom reflecting on Nagaoka. We see a flashback of Suji canceling the story covering his death, and suddenly Yamamoto approaches him and asks if he has seen the news. Suji replies yeah, and Yamamoto says that he's just tired of running away before then walking off. Later, Suji is in the bathroom with his son when he suddenly senses someone watching them through the bathroom door. He's startled, but only to see that it's just his wife. Meanwhile, Yushi goes back to the editorial office and asks around for Yamamoto, but no one has seen him in a while. He calls Yamamoto's phone, but instead, a mysterious person answers, instructing Yushi to meet him at a specific location. When Yushi arrives, he finds Yamamoto's corpse laying on the ground while unsettling laughter fills the room. The murderer turns out to be Imanami, a co-worker who had previously only been seen in the background of the past 2 volumes. Imanami explains that the society knows all, and those who cause grief to the society are considered disgraceful. Yushi wonders if Imanami plans to kill him, but instead, he hugs him, saying that he won't kill him because he is family. However, if Yushi continues this investigation, then they will no longer be family. Imanami gives Yushi the USB that Yamamoto had wanted him to have. Yushi is confused as to why he would even hand it over, but Imanami tells him that he is free to do whatever he wants with it, even continue the investigation, but warns him that the society will accept whatever decision he makes. Later, Yushi checks the USB. Inside, he finds a video showing a group of smiling people burning someone alive. To his horror, the person who set the victim on fire is revealed to be Megumin. At the church, we see a funeral ceremony for a deceased member, and the group burns the body, and Imanami is shown doing the same thing to Yamamoto's corpse. Yushi is later seen spiraling into despair, unsure of what to do. The evidence on the USB clearly shows Megumin committing murder, which would ruin her, but at the same time, hiding it keeps the truth buried. He begins to believe that none of this would even be happening if Yui had never died, blaming himself for everything. Weeks passed, and back at the church, the leaders announced that there is a new member who will now be living with them, Yushi. Yuki confronts him asking what happened to his supposed work, but Yushi replies that he had quit his job and is now going to give his all to the Shinshou Society. We then see Yushi attempting to adapt to daily life within the church. In one disturbing ritual, he is brought to a river in the dead of winter and then forced to laugh throughout the painful experience. Yuka splashes a bucket of icy water on him, and when Yushi stops laughing, the group leader ridicules him, telling him to release all that rot in his heart. Yushi recounts his guilt and trauma. He admits that everything he has done was only for himself. He wanted to care for others, but someone always ended up dying because of him. He blames himself for everything, yet at least in the society, he can still smile. Yuka realizes that Yushi has become just as far gone as Megumin. A leader named Shoma embraces him, telling him that he belongs at this church. 6 months later, Yozumi is shown investigating Tateishi's death. 6 months ago, his father died, leaving him finally free to pursue his own mission to take down the cult. He begins questioning his wife, pointing out that it doesn't make sense for Tateishi to have even though Tateishi's wife has taken his assets and left them. Yozumi reveals that Tateishi filed for divorce 3 days before his death, making his death pretty suspicious. Furthermore, Tateishi was at work, not at home, which doesn't align with typical patterns. For example, if you were bullied at school, most likely the people that would commit yasus would do it at school. Yozumi theorizes that Tateishi staged his death to cut all ties with his wife and protect her, but in reality, he was likely murdered. Tateishi's wife asks if Yozumi is there to kill her and if he's also a part of the cult. Yozumi says too, and then asks if anyone has visited her. He then explains that he himself was actually a part of the cult, but as a child because of his mother. He remembers the scripture and the eerie forced smiles, but his mother ruined their family. The only person that he had left was his father. Tateishi's wife then gives him a card saying that a few smiling people came to visit her, asking about her husband. After leaving, Yozumi notices a truck tailing him. He stops at a vending machine and then confronts the driver, suspecting that he's connected to the card. The card turns out to be from the office of a governor. Yozumi presses the driver, asking if he's been following orders from the governor. The man then suddenly drops his facade and then begins smiling creepily. We get a flashback to Yozumi's childhood where his mother abused him whenever he failed to memorize scripture. His father would step in to protect him, while young Yozumi cried and forced himself to smile at the same time, wondering if he'd ever truly laugh for real. Back in the present, Yozumi pulls out his gun and then shoves it down the driver's throat. The man breaks, admitting that the governor is involved, but when Yozumi asks who is backing the governor, the man says that he doesn't know, only that he once overheard something about a master Shoai. Yozumi lets him go, trying to remain civil, but the driver just keeps on calling him corrupt. Yozumi then travels to Kanagawa to meet the governor. Shockingly, he's allowed to see him even without an appointment, which he finds very odd. At the appointment, he accuses the governor of being Shoai, but the governor denies it, saying that he knows very little about him, only that he was instructed to watch over Tateishi's wife. The governor then threatens Yozumi, warning that if he investigates further, then his life will be over. Before leaving, however, Yozumi confronts the governor about his alleged drug business. It's revealed that the 3 corpses were injected with various drugs, including LSD. Yozumi accuses the governor of having a half-brother who runs the gang deals with LSD and then redistributing it to the cult. To prove his point, he exposes the governor's assistant, whose arm is covered with injection marks. The governor cuts the conversation short, and the assistant escorts him out to his car. As Yozumi drives away, he is pulled over by a police officer who is visibly smiling. The officer demands a random breath test, but Yozumi refuses. The officer insists that his car smells strange and then proceeds to open the trunk without permission. Inside, Yozumi is shocked to find the driver's corpse stuffed into a body bag. He is then arrested for the murder. However, Yozumi remains calm, almost unfazed. Suddenly, another officer enters, asking the arresting officer to take a look at something. Yozumi is released, and the officer in charge snaps angrily, asking, "How long have you been working with a group?" It's revealed that Yozumi has assembled a team of officers and higher-ups dedicated to taking down the Shinshou Society. They had recorded everything that Yozumi did, and even captured video evidence of the cult members planting the driver's corpse into his truck. The footage is leaked online and then spreads across social media. A counselor then reveals that it was Shoai who personally ordered Yozumi's arrest. The volume ends with the counselor announcing that there is still one more member in their group who should be making his move soon, who turns out to be Yushi. And that's where we'll end off Smiley. The series is a fantastic mystery type series with tons of gore, amazing art, and yes, I would say it is a lot better than Grimace. I think that this series handles its scares perfectly, not filled with jump scares but just super creepy imagery. I am afraid that they will be taking a lot more of an action thriller approach in the next couple of volumes than horror, but we'll just have to see. If this volume gets to 3K likes, then we'll be making a part 2 video. But did you guys like this series? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, go check out our Discord, Patreon, and YouTube membership. The links will be all in the description below. And if you want more horror videos like this one, then why not scroll down and hit that subscribe button. But I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.